you for joining the Office of School and Community Nutrition Program's Wellness Policy webinar series. This webinar is the first in a series of 4 on implementing the 2016 USDA Wellness Policy Final Rule. The USDA issued the final Wellness Policy Rule in July of 2016. The final rule focuses on increased transparency, stakeholder involvement and public updates, food and beverage marketing restrictions, nutrition standards for food and beverages provided, nutrition promotion, and an assessment of wellness policy implementation every 3 years at a minimum. Most of these recommendations were included in the 2013 proposed wellness policy rule, and agencies statewide have been taking steps to meet these requirements. Let's go over a few housekeeping items before we get started. As I said in the previous slide, this is the first of 4 wellness policy webinars designed to help your agency meet the new wellness policy requirements and ultimately improve student access to physical activity and nutritious messaging and foods. These requirements were released in July of 2016 with an implementation date of June 30th, 2017. The webinars are clustered into 15-minute increments to help you meet your professional standards goals. Use Professional Standards Code 3230 under the Healthy School Environment Standard. These align with the Maryland system-level recommendations for wellness policy implementation, which will be identified throughout the series. Lastly, the webinars are designed with you in mind. We know you wear many hats and sometimes have limited time. Please go at your own pace. Feel free to stop and start the video at any time and explore the accompanying resources when it is most convenient for you. Time is built into each webinar to allow you to explore these resources when it is most effective for you. Having a pen and paper handy for notes throughout will be helpful. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. The objective of this first video is to give you the tools to create a team of stakeholders to assist in wellness policy development, implementation, and monitoring. This objective aligns with several of Maryland's recommendations. Let's take a look. Maryland created 10 evidence-based recommendations for agencies to lead to successful implementation of wellness policies. The recommendations focus on building wellness policies, communicating wellness policy information, and monitoring wellness policy implementation. Since this is the first video, we will focus on the first steps needed to meet the local school wellness policy final rule, which will revolve around recommendation 1 through 3. Maryland recommends your agency maintain a system or agency-level team that is representative of your school and the community. It is also important to identify resources needed to support wellness policy implementation. Perhaps those resources are human, financial, or both. Maryland and the final rule recommend developing wellness policy implementation and monitoring plans that will help you communicate to students, families, and the community. In those implementation plans, be sure to create a plan for regular meetings with your team and a process for reviewing and revising your wellness policy, as identified in Recommendation 8. With an increased focus on implementation and assessment, it is important to write your policy with assessment in mind. Take a minute to pause this video and write this down. Let's review the 2 requirements we will address in this video. The first one requires agencies to permit participation by the general public and school community in the development, implementation, review, and update of the wellness policy. The second requirement is to identify wellness policy leadership of 1 or more school officials who have the authority and responsibility to ensure that each school complies with the policy. Let's take a closer look at the first one. Some of you are already doing this, but many of you are thinking, who would I include besides the people who are already helping me with the wellness policy? Well, the goal of the wellness policy is implementation, and the more people you involve in the wellness policy process and implementation, the more likely your agency will have a wellness policy that is actually getting used. We know that every agency is different and has their own unique structure and stakeholder groups. Take a minute to pause and write down some of the people who have an influence on the school environment and students in your building. Hopefully you've thought of a few additional people to support your agency's wellness policy efforts. Here is an expansive list that may help you to add one or two more. Pause now to review and make some notes. While you are growing your team, it is important to have a regular meeting schedule at a convenient time and location, which allows for maximum participation. Maryland recommends teams meet once a month or at a minimum 4 times a year. Some of our agencies have embraced the CDC's whole school, whole community, whole child approach to wellness. It may be helpful to check out this model for ideas of how these components can contribute to wellness and people to recruit for your team. The next requirement identified in this video is the identification of wellness policy leadership. If you're watching this video, hopefully the person who has the authority and responsibility to ensure that wellness policy compliance is you. If not, let's hope the person who does have authority and responsibility to ensure that each school complies with the policy is on that list you created a minute ago. Take a moment to pause and identify who in your agency has authority and responsibility over agency-wide policies and whole school initiatives. The person you identified, or at least their position, needs to be identified in your agency's wellness policy. If you're still unsure about who this might be, take time to discuss this as a team and make sure key leadership roles are involved in writing and implementing your policy. These resources will be very helpful. The USDA's Summary of the Final Wellness Rule, Action for Healthy Kids Wellness Policy Tool, and CDC Parents for Healthy Schools. All of these resources can be found using the link in this video or by completing a simple Google search using the resource title provided. So what are your next steps? Get the word out and recruit a strong team. Involve a leader who will help ensure your team's hard work is implemented in the school. And last, watch webinar number 2, Writing Your Wellness Policy. For further assistance,